Mr. Winkel, would you like to start us off? We're reading Before the Law and an Imperial Message by Franz Kafka.
Before the law stands a doorkeeper. To this doorkeeper there comes a man from the country and prays for admittance to the law. But the doorkeeper says that he cannot grant admittance at the moment. The man thinks it over and then asks if he will be allowed in later. It is possible, says the doorkeeper, but not at the moment. Since the gate stands open, as usual, and the doorkeeper steps to one side, the man stoops to peer through the gateway into the interior. Observing that, the doorkeeper laughs and says, "If you are so drawn to it, just try to go in, despite my veto. But take note, I am powerful, and I am only the least of the doorkeepers. From hall to hall, there is one doorkeeper after another, each more powerful than the last. The third doorkeeper is already so terrible that even I cannot bear to look at him. These are difficulties the man from the country has not expected. The law, he thinks, should surely be accessible at all times and to everyone. But as he now takes a closer look at the doorkeeper, in his fur coat, with his big sharp nose and long, thin, black tartar beard, he decides that it is better to wait until he gets permission to enter. The doorkeeper gives him a stool and lets him sit down at one side of the door. There he sits for days and years. He makes many attempts to be admitted, and wearies the doorkeeper by his importunity. The doorkeeper frequently has little interviews with him, asking him questions about his home and many other things. But the questions are put indifferently, as great lords put them, and always finish with the statement that he cannot be let in yet. The man, who has furnished himself with many things for his journey, sacrifices all he has, however valuable, to bribe the doorkeeper. The doorkeeper accepts everything, but always with the remark, "I am only taking it to keep you from thinking you have omitted anything." During these many years, the man fixes his attention almost continuously on the doorkeeper. He forgets the other doorkeepers, and this first one seems to him the sole obstacle preventing access to the law. He curses his bad luck. In his early years, boldly and loudly. Later, as he grows old, he only grumbles to himself. He becomes childish, and since in his year-long contemplation of the doorkeeper, he has come to know even the fleas in his fur collar, he begs the fleas as well to help him and to change the doorkeeper's mind. At length, his eyesight begins to fail, and he does not know whether the world is really darker or whether his eyes are only deceiving him. Yet in his darkness, he is now aware of a radiance that streams inextinguishably from the gateway of the law. Now he has not very long to live. Before he dies, all his experiences in these long years gather themselves in his head to one point, a question he has not yet asked the doorkeeper. He waves him nearer since he can no longer raise his stiffening body. The doorkeeper has to bend low toward him, for the difference in height between them has altered much to the man's disadvantage. "What do you want to know now?" asks the doorkeeper. "You are insatiable." "Everyone strives to reach the law," says the man. "So how does it happen that for all these many years no one but myself has ever begged for admittance?" The doorkeeper recognizes that the man has reached his end, and, to let his failing senses catch the words, roars in his ear, "No one else could ever be admitted here, since this gate was made only for you. I am now going to shut it." And next, an imperial message. "The emperor," so a parable runs, "has sent a message to you, the humble subject, the insignificant shadow cowering in the remotest distance before the imperial sun. The emperor, from his deathbed, has sent a message to you alone. He has commanded the messenger to kneel down by the bed, and has whispered the message to him. So much store did he lay on it that he ordered the messenger to whisper it back into his ear again. Then by a nod of the head he has confirmed that it is right. Yes, before the assembled spectators of his death, all the obstructing walls have been broken down, and on the spacious and loftily mounting open staircases stand in a ring the great princes of the empire. Before all these he has delivered his message. The messenger immediately sets out on his journey. A powerful and indefatigable man, now pushing with his right arm, now with his left, he cleaves a way for himself through the throng. If he encounters resistance, he points to his breast, where the symbol of the sun glitters. The way is made easier for him than it would be for any other man. But the multitudes are so vast, their numbers have no end. If he could reach the open fields, how fast he would fly, and soon doubtless you would hear the welcome hammering of his fists on your door. But instead, how vainly does he wear out his strength. Still, he is only making his way through the chambers of the innermost palace. Never will he get to the end of them, and if he succeeded in that, nothing would be gained. He must next fight his way down the stair, and if he succeeded in that, nothing would be gained. The courts would still have to be crossed, and after the courts, the second outer palace, and once more stairs and courts, and once more another palace, and so on for thousands of years. And if at last he should burst through the outermost gate, but never, never can that happen. The imperial capital would lie before him, and the center of the world, crammed to bursting with its own sediment. Nobody could fight his way through here, even with a message from a dead man. But you sit at your window when evening falls and dream it to yourself.
Okay, so um, I would like to ask a question about this first story, and I would hope to connect it to the second story later on, but we'll see if we get that far. Um, so on page 3, probably about a quarter of the way down the page, we have the first quote from the doorkeeper. And this sentence says, observing that, the doorkeeper laughs and says, if you are so drawn to it, just try to go in, despite my veto. But take note, I am powerful. So, what I would like to know is, what power does the doorkeeper have?
Seems like he has the power to keep him out. It seems that way.
Yeah, and what kind of power is that to just be able to keep one guy out of the law
Mhm.
or out of some doorway to the law that was made only for him? I mean, that doesn't seem like much of a an impressive power at all, really.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah,
thought
I
the
guess
power.
the
Yeah, you,
the
you go.
he continues his remark. Maybe it would be important to note that he says, I'm only the least. From hall to hall, there is one doorkeeper after another, each more powerful than the last. So if we're looking at power, it seems like that he thinks there's an increase. We of course never see it, but the third doorkeeper is already so terrible that even I cannot bear to look at him. So I guess the power of keeping one man from the law, I mean, it's also visually connected. I mean, it's connected to this, the terror one would feel of in sight, just the sight, the spectacle of this person.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, maybe that's a good point. A little bit farther down the page, we can see that this unnamed character says to himself, it seems. Now he takes a closer look at the doorkeeper in his fur coat with a big sharp nose and long, thin black tartar beard, and apparently, based on his appearance, he decides that it is better to wait until he gets permission to enter. I mean, maybe there's something to be said about the simple presence of the doorkeeper in making that decision. You know, that his something about his aspect makes it seem more expedient to wait for him to give him permission to enter the door. When just before the doorkeeper had said, you can give it a shot, but he has this kind of like amorphous, unknown influence.
Both his nose and his beard are shaped as a key. It's a
Long.
long nose, a big beard, big narrow beard.
My, that's enigmatic. Wait, what do you make of that, Mr. Sorokin?
I mean, I'm not sure exactly, but something I'm noticing is that the doorkeeper seems to have a powerful way to be indifferent.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of the opening question about the power.
Hmm.
And even at the very end, you might assume by the end, the final line, no one else could ever be admitted here, since this gate was made only for you. I am now going to shut it. And you could assume that maybe the doorkeeper has the power to shut it, to shut the door, which
Hmm.
is open, described as being open at the beginning. But in fact, we never see him shutting it down. More than that, we know that the main character who approaches the law in the beginning is so blind that he probably cannot even see whether anything is being shot in front of him.
Hmm.
So that last line might as well be a kind of fabrication that the doorkeeper is doing.
Yeah.
I mean, at the very least, though, we do know that the doorkeeper can take things from him. Like, I guess I'm thinking about, we're kind of listing off what we actually see the doorkeeper do. And I mean, it seems like he claims to have the power to shut the door, and I think it's a good point to say, like, he never does. We never actually see that. But what we do see him do is A, give him a stool. Okay, so he has the power to give something. Um, and he has the power to receive something as well. A little bit lower down the page on page 3, he says that the doorkeeper accepts everything, that is, everything that this man has prepared for his journey. And he always says, I am only taking it to keep you from thinking you have omitted anything. And so, not only has the power to accept things, but also has a purpose in doing so. And it is in order to keep him from thinking that he has omitted anything. I think that's kind of an open question as to whether or not he has, in fact, omitted anything. Um, I guess I'm referring specifically to taking the first option, which is attempting to go into the gate. But that's kind of my own speculation.
Wait, repeat the last speculation?
Oh, I mean, I think it's more of I mean, I think again, this is a speculation on my part, but has the character actually omitted anything? Is the doorkeeper actually keeping him from
No.
registering the fact that he's omitted an option, which is to try to go into the gate rather than just waiting for permission for it? Um, but maybe that's a little bit more ingenious than need be.
The sense that I got from that, from the doorkeeper saying, I'm only taking it to keep you from thinking you've omitted anything, is that he, for some mysterious reason, wants the man to think that he's made every sacrifice he's capable of making. Um, and maybe not necessarily that he, or maybe the doorkeeper is not necessarily, it's not necessarily in his interest for the man to think that like he hasn't done everything in his power. Like there is perhaps a difference between making sacrifices and like omitting some action generally. But what I wonder about this is why is it in the doorkeeper's interest for the man to think he hasn't omitted anything? Why would the doorkeeper want something like that? And maybe by answering that question, we could get a little pry a little further into the doorkeeper's character and perhaps discover something about his power.
Hmm.
And I guess kind of thinking about what the possible goal of the doorkeeper could be. Um, I guess I would. I mean, there's not much to go off of, but I guess I would key off of the idea of being a keeper of something. Being a doorkeeper. The door being, I suppose, the door to the law. Um, there seems to be kind of an inflection point at the very end of the story. I would say this is the second or the penultimate sentence, um, which says the doorkeeper recognizes that the man has reached his end, and to let his failing senses catch the words he wrote in his ears. No one else could ever be admitted here, since this gate was made only for you. And now he's going to shut it. Um, I guess there seems to be, at least I was taking this, the doorkeeper recognizing that the man has reached his end in this dual sense, not only in the sense that he's literally about to die, and so he's reached his completion in that sense, but also in the sense that there has been kind of a fruition of something which you've been building toward all this time. I think that's reflected in the way that we speak about what this question actually is, where it's, the the man has focused all of his experiences into one point, a question, and this question is somehow the fruition of his experiences. I'm wondering if it's, partially that the doorkeeper is attempting to coax him toward this end, toward this goal of asking this question. Seems to be, at least it prompts some new information from the doorkeeper, which we hadn't had previously. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It's an interesting way to explain that because, assuming there are more than one doorkeepers, if the first doorkeeper were to let him in, then the man would never be able to see whether he's the only one seeking admittance to the law. Because he would be past the beginning of that process. And there could always be people behind him that he has not seen. But the fact that he just spends his whole existence, his whole life at the beginning, I mean, yeah, it does seem to lead him up to this question that could only germinate in this particular context. That he is indeed the only one seeking admittance to the law. And maybe it would be interesting to think what that could even mean. Just to seek
But
admittance.
maybe it would also,
Yeah.
maybe it could call into question the veracity of this actually being a gate to the law. Assuming that it's the only gate to what in the story is called the law. Um, it seems like if the only way to it was made only for one person, then that would remove whatever the gate leads to from the status of law. Um, I mean, that sort of all rests on the assumption that this is the only gateway to the law. But I think it's a safe assumption to make because why wouldn't, if there were another way to it that perhaps wasn't guarded by a powerful doorkeeper, then why wouldn't the man take the path of, you know, less resistance?
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe though that's kind of an open question in the sense that, like, does one need to gain admittance to the law? Is that even a coherent sentence?
Right, yeah. What does it mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, the way the law is spoken of is so strange because also at some point the doorkeeper says, or no, this is actually the man himself says everyone strives to reach the law, um, as if it's something to I don't as if it's a reward or um, yeah, I don't know. I mean that doesn't seem harmonious with a view of the law as like conditions under which a person lives.
Hmm.
Like under what circumstances would the law, capital L, as it's used in the story, not already be reached?
Right. Well, I mean, maybe this is a good time to bring in the second story. Because I mean, at the end, I guess I was taking these kind of dual stories to be, or maybe inverses of one another, in the sense that in both, we have people who are kind of striving towards something, with all of their either, spiritual, persistence or physical persistence in the case of the messenger. But there seems to be a difference at the end of the second story, an Imperial Message, in the sense that the last sentence says, "But you sit," addressing the reader, "you sit at your window when evening falls and dream it yourself, dream the message that the king has brought to you." And so there seems to be this idea that, you know, I mean, maybe I'm cramming too much into this question, but the man who is said to be the most insignificant shadow cowering in the remotest distance before the imperial sun, farthest away from any possible shadow of law, somehow is able to achieve the message that the emperor has sent to him without even hearing it from the messenger to begin with. Um, the man who is in fact farthest away from the law somehow has communication with it, um, as opposed to this first character who is ostensibly at the foot at the stoop of the law. He's on the threshold, and yet he, by some strange power, doesn't achieve it, won't allow himself to achieve it, or won't be allowed to achieve it by the so-called guardians of it. And I think this is kind of like flipping it up into um, kicking it up into our own judgment to ask whether or not the law is something that we need to gain admittance to. We need to somehow receive from somewhere else, um, rather than finding it in our own dreams.
But what do you take the dream it to be at the end of second story? To me, it wasn't obvious that it refers to the law. I mean, you dream. I mean, it's ambiguous, but it might be that you dream delivering the message. The messenger is attempting to deliver the message from the dying emperor,
Mhm.
and he's constantly preoccupied with just that goal. That goal cannot be reached. I mean, so it claims at the end of the story. Um, but you sit at your window when evening falls and dream it to yourself. I mean, I think maybe I'm broadening the question a little bit, but it might be that both stories speak to not necessarily the law, whether we think about it as political law, religious law, some other law, but maybe it just speaks of of a certain fulfillment of knowledge, just fulfilling to know something,
Mhm.
in both cases, fulfilling to finish something. And there seems to be a kind of incompletion, like kind of both stories end in incompletion, and more than that, you start reading the second story after the first one, and you think, well, maybe my sense of incompletion will be completed. But everything the second story offers is a deeper sense of incompletion, if that makes sense. Just kind of from the other side of the law labyrinth, if that makes sense. Like as if there is this man trying to reach the law and the law trying to reach the man, and they just never reach each other.
Yeah, in the second story, it's not only a sense of incompletion, but an impossibility of completion. Um, like the chambers of the innermost palace just seem to extend endlessly, and then somehow there exists the you outside of all of that, that the chambers that it takes that 1,000 years to traverse through. Um, there are in the second story apparently two realms. Um, one at the center that's just like vastly expansive, and then one in which you sit at your window. You're too far away from the center of all things, or like the place from which the message, maybe the law originates, that it couldn't possibly reach you.
And on the
Whereas
other end
in
is
the
just a
first,
dying emperor.
yeah.
Sorry, I mean, I kind of interrupted you.
Well, I was just thinking also like in the first story, there doesn't seem to be an impossibility. Um, in fact, the doorkeeper says, um, it is possible that the man will be allowed in later. Quote, it is possible. And he invites the man to try to go through despite the doorkeeper's veto. They're perhaps two different images of not accessing something.
Mhm.
In the first one, it's possible, but it's maybe too intimidating. In the second one, it's impossible, or maybe just will take a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the threat of the doorkeeper is so bizarre. I mean, it's a kind of tacit threat, I take it to be. But when he says on page 3, if you're so drawn to it, just try to go in. Try to go in, man. Despite my veto. But take note, I am powerful. I don't know if a powerful person usually says that. Okay. But then he adds, as if recognizing the weakness of the first threat.
Well, I think someone who's truly powerful will dare less powerful people to challenge their power because they know nobody presents a threat to them.
Well, exactly, yeah. So he first says, take note, I am powerful. And then as if recognizing the first threat wasn't kind of enough, which maybe it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I am only the least of the doorkeepers. Okay. You know who my friends are?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty clear to me that he actually is powerful. I mean, he does the man doesn't go in. At the very least, he keeps the man from going in. The man waits for years in front of this door, waiting to give permission. He never gets in. Um, and so through some, spiritual acrobatics, he in fact does affect that. Um,
Yeah.
which I guess to say is like it is a bizarre threat. Say like beware. But at the end of the day, the man actually does beware.
Yeah.
Yeah, which then deprives us of the confirmation that the doorkeeper actually is as powerful as he says he is. So as
Right.
far as we know, the doorkeeper only has an appearance of power because we never see it challenged.
Right.
Hmm. Are there any other details that might be interesting to this? I mean, there are many strange details.
Yeah, the second one is it's curious that the we pointed out that there's a movement within or trying to move in, I guess, in the first one that fails, and in the second one from inside a palace or law structure trying to move out. Um, and I think that, yeah, I'm just wondering about why in the first case, then there's something very vague about trying to be admitted to the law, which I think was mentioned too. Like, what does that mean to be admitted to the law? I would understand if this man from the country had a specific case he would like to have recognized, or like he would want someone to rule on something that happened, or that would be more what I'd expect than admittance. Um, so there's a real lack of specificity for me and the something very vague about going this inward movement, but then coming out, we're told there is a message, at least. It's not even that this person is trying to be admitted into some company or something. There's a specific statement that they're awaiting, which feels very different. And yeah, I guess I wonder about that detail, why changing the direction of this movement also gives you a very different um, thing you yearn for or are asking about as the one who's, I guess stuck in this situation.
Mhm.
Yeah, the way you put it makes it look like the two stories show what's happening on two different sides of the same equation, where both a man and a message are trying to reach each other, but like just get stuck somewhere.
Hmm.
So what does this part mean on page 5? Or it begins at the bottom of page 4. I mean, I just never paid attention to it.
What does the what mean? Sorry.
Yes, I'm about to read it.
Okay.
Then, by a nod of the head, he has confirmed that it is right, that the Emperor confirming that what was whispered back to him is the same thing he whispered before. Yes, before the assembled spectators of his death, all the obstructing walls have been broken down, and on the spacious and loftily mounting open staircases stand in a ring the great princes of the empire. Before all this, he has delivered his message. What's going on here? Do they hear the message? And also, what's going on with the walls? Like the
Yeah.
walls just came down, kind of dynamite style. It's a bit
I mean,
obscure.
I guess I was interpreting this line to be something of a correlate to the situation that we have in the first story, both of which include barriers that have been removed, and then people standing in the spaces that were once barred and forming their own type of barrier. On the one hand, we have the open gate and a doorkeeper, or the open door and a doorkeeper, and on this wise, we have death, which does indeed seem to you know both literally breaking down walls in order to make space for people to come and um, mourn, but also in the sense that kind of inhibition goes away. Maybe this is really the time for truth, death being the time for truth, or attempting to communicate something correctly. Um, it seems like, on the other hand, those barriers get broken down with death, and then the princes of the empire, all of the courtiers, all of the people who are there to actually witness this, become the barrier themselves and don't allow the messenger to get to whoever he's trying to reach. Um,
But he is, no? I mean, he sets out on a journey right away. He doesn't seem to be abstracted by the people. I'm just not even sure what the people are doing there because it's like they're about to hear this great message. I mean, I assume, maybe the suspicion one could have is like, well, the emperor is dying, he's about to announce his will or something like that. And everyone's like waiting, like, especially because there are many princesses and each one of them could become the new emperor, I assume. And they're like,
yeah, I mean,
Right,
I
and
suppose.
they make way when they see the sun symbol on the breast of the messenger.
Well, I guess I was taking it that he was like, well, he says that, the messenger is like pushing people out with his right arm, and then his left, he's cleaving away for himself through the throng. And if he encounters resistance, he uses the symbol, but like the whole time, he's forcing his way through this crowd, which seems to begin like exactly where, right beside the emperor. I imagine that he had to be speaking to the emperor in order to hear his message. He seems very close at first. Um, and then it's not the fact that there are walls, because the walls are gone. It's the fact that there are people that are stopping him from going anywhere. And first it's the stairs, and then it's the court, and then it's the city, that need to be pushed through. And it's all, which says, he says, it's all it's the center of the world crammed to bursting with its own sediment that won't allow this messenger to get through. Seem to be in large part people.
But it doesn't seem like there actually is a difficulty for him to get through. I mean, I think maybe what you're pointing out is that there are things there are obstacles that would present a difficulty to just somebody, but it turns out that for this messenger, the way is made easier than it would be for any other man.
Hmm.
There are obstacles, but the obstacles give way, and yet still the messenger isn't able until until maybe after 1,000 years to um, get to the end of the innermost palate. It's
Yeah, but there does seem to be a problem here. It's that I think it's not actually clear, is it? That whether these people, if he encounters resistance, he points to his breast where the symbol of the sun glitters. But he is also pushing with his right arm with his left, and the way is made easier for him than it would be for any other man. But that doesn't mean that people give way. That just means that could be tongue in cheek, as in easier than for anyone else. Still not, basically not easy. Still they're in the way.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and there's a similarity. I mean, I don't know if it's obvious. It wasn't obvious to me. The similarity between the two stories with with the sun that he points to, kind of the sign of the sun. And I think one of the last things we learn about the man in the first story is that he has this vision of light that comes from inside, and he takes it to be the law, the radiance of the law on page 4. That streams inextinguishably from the gateway of the law. And I was trying to think maybe that's the same. I mean, that light and that star are connected in some way. That star on the messenger's chest actually, in some way, emanates that radiance, or can be taken as emanating it.
Hmm. Symbol of this. Oh, it glitters. It is said to glitter.
Yeah, and the
Sorry,
first
I was
story
going to counter
says,
that it's just a symbol of the sun and not the actual sun that shines, but we do get at least that it glitters.
yeah.
Hmm.
And the first story says, yet in his darkness he is now aware of a radiance that streams inextinguishably from the gateway of the law.
Yeah. But I like the fact that he's in his blind as he becomes more blind with age, as he sees less, he actually can make out detail, or maybe not detail, but just this emanation that he couldn't before. Whereas the small glittering badge on the messenger's shoulder seems like something that's a detail you might lose as you age, I would imagine. I
Hmm.
don't know. I'm suspicious that they're actually the same. That they're,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Also, there's like, I mean, visually, I'm just trying to imagine these two stories and how they compare. I mean, the first story begins by this emperor, lying on his deathbed and kind of this messenger kneeling down to his ear. And the first story ends in a similar fashion. This man is it's pointed out that their heights, I get apparently were similar, but he gradually kind of bows with age,
know.
and then the messenger approaches him. I mean, this hand is a messenger, if you couldn't tell. This messenger approaches him and kind of bows to him a little bit. I mean, I don't know. There's a way in which there's this ironic similarities between the two stories, where in some way you can see the man as being just the inverse of the emperor, I guess, or maybe the something like that. Messenger somehow being reminiscent of the man, maybe too.
Mhm.
how I don't see that.
Well, I
Wait,
was saying earlier, I thought I was very happy when someone agreed with that observation that, the man is kind of in some way reaching out into the law while the messenger is reaching out from the law, but they're,
Mhm.
reaching out to the same point from two opposite directions. Um,
Okay,
yeah.
right.
I mean, is it a story about bureaucracy of some sort? I mean, maybe it's a bit too broad to say, or I'm afraid to make this kind of broad remarks. But it seems like you
Well,
can imagine that there's just a law and the receiver of the law, and that seems to be how this guy thinks about it in the beginning. Like, there's law and everyone knows it, or can know it, or should know it. But in fact, there's this kind of hidden layers of doorkeepers. Each doorkeeper is apparently just an extremely strange person who are kind of preventing the law to be known or lawful things to be communicated, and ends up being this kind of huge spectacle.
yeah, and I guess that kind of sheds some light for me on the meaning of like being admitted to the law. If it's a if these stories are about bureaucracy, then they're about the complications involved in um, being allowed into some secret club.
Hmm. While there is no secret club.
Right, maybe there isn't.
Yeah, I would really like to be part of that secret club with no address listed.
I am.
Mhm.
Second?
I said I am. Mr. Sorokin, what did you were seeing a parallel in the character of the messenger and the character of the um doorkeeper. And I think I guess I'm just noticing now that the messenger is also described as a powerful person.
Oh, PC?
Yeah, whereas yeah, it's on page 5 at the top.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think the emperor is ever used, but yeah, just because we've started with that question on what that adjective mean in the case of the gatekeeper.
Hmm.
The messenger says the messenger immediately sets out on his journey, a powerful, an indefatigable man, etc. But that's also curious. I think that rather than the emperor being described as powerful, it's the messenger.
Is it the same kind of power that the doorkeeper has?
Oh, well, that's what I wonder is that whatever that means Kafka thinks of both whatever this characteristic is, they share a characteristic power. I mean, I don't know. I'm still not quite sure on how to exactly characterize that characteristic, but they both have it.
Well, think I think we did make some progress on the kind of power that the doorkeeper has, which is at least that he has the power to either admit someone or to intimidate someone out of um, admitting themselves.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, there seems to be a correlate there with because obviously we say that a messenger is pushing people out, like physically he's moving people, which seems to be a different type of power. We never see the doorman and the unnamed character um, touch one another, kind of exert force. However, the messenger also uses the symbol of the sun, and it seems to, I guess, by implication, um, people kind of part for him. That seems to be a similar type of power, simply based on appearance, in the same way that the unnamed character, upon observing the doorman's appearance, chooses a course of action which he thinks is best.
Hmm.
Both of those seem to be based on appearance rather than actual exerted force.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like both of the stories elevate this unobvious man in the middle. Like, you might go to a restaurant and you're like, oh man, this is like great place. The cooks here are top notch. These cooks spent like 20 years in Paris. It's like sweating in the kitchen, learning from the best. And they're going to this restaurant, you're like, you have this foretaste of great joy on your tongue, and then the waiter spits into your food and like kind of scrambles it around so it looks like trash. I mean, it seems to be. I'm trying to draw a kind of kind of dirty analogy to the stories. Yeah, there is this person in the middle you might not have considered when you picked a good restaurant.
Uh-huh. I see. I see. Whew. You brought it around. That's good.
Yeah,
Mm.
Hmm.
but it's even more interesting if there are several people in the middle, and one is actively trying to, prevent certain things from happening, and another one is actually trying to make things happen, like the messenger.
Mhm.
Like from all we can tell, he's actually trying to communicate what he was asked to. Well, the first one maybe isn't. But imagine the messenger. I mean, you could imagine a kind of sequel to this, like a third story. Let's term it melodically the third story. And the messenger reaches all the way to this first doorkeeper, and the doorkeeper says, "Here's a big soft stool for you, man. Sit down." I know I
Yeah,
know the
I
story is
just
a
I
kind of
like
comic.
it's possible. It's possible, but what is this? Does this man, the man in the first story, does he dream? Is he like me in the second story? We don't hear about any dreams.
But he wants something. I mean, I don't know about dreaming like in a lofty sense, but he wants something. He really wants to go and get to the law. And perhaps that's what he's thinking about all his years there.
Right. Yeah, I guess the dreaming it, yeah, you talked about how the it in that final sentence could either be dreaming it, the realization of the messenger's journey, the admittance could be that rather than dreaming the specific message to yourself.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm suspecting. I don't know if that's right.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a commonality between the man in the first story who constantly asks questions to the doorkeeper. He's like making these non-real efforts, and the second story where the messenger, it also seems to indicate that he makes these non-real efforts. That it's like it looks all real and it looks like it'd be helpful, but it says in nothing would be accomplished if you did this, and that nothing is accomplished. And the same is true, it seems, of the first guy that
Mm,
he asks insatiably, and obviously nothing is accomplished.
Hmm.
And there may be other corollaries between these characters.
hmm Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but one achieves nothing by asking, and another achieves nothing by, running. I mean, I would assume in the first case he would achieve something by running, and in the second case he might achieve something by asking.
Yeah. And the story seems to imply that something can be done.
Right, 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 exactly. But like both the messenger and the first man really get something very wrong about what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they actively just don't want to achieve whatever they're seeming to hope to achieve.
Yeah. I mean, it seems that way. I mean, the gatekeeper asks him, or tells him like, hey, you could try if you really want.
Right. He's like, nah, I don't really want that. I would rather just spend 10 decades here and go blind and die.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting observation.
So how does something get done? How would these stories go differently?
Well, I mean, at least in the second one, it doesn't seem like they're it could go any differently because in the second to last sentence it says nobody could fight his way through here, even with a message from a dead man. I mean, I guess the only way it could go differently is that someone could give a weaker effort to try to get out of the palace than this messenger does. There doesn't
A
appear to
weaker
be
effort?
any hope. Yeah, a weaker effort that's even less successful than the messenger's already unsuccessful journey.
And that would be better, I guess.
Um,
Is that what you're
no,
saying?
that's just how I imagine it could possibly go differently because it couldn't go better.
Hmm.
Wait, wait, couldn't you go? Could you go towards the rather than sitting and dreaming?
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean,
Maybe
yeah,
if you were a
that's
little, maybe if you were a little bit courageous.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
not like that.
yeah, yeah. Not me, but someone who's courageous. There you go. And just like how in the first story, the man could have tried to. I mean, it seems like actually nothing. There's no physical barrier to try. Or I'd like the barrier is the whatever power that the gatekeeper exerts on the man's mind. But the gate is open,
Hmm.
and it is
And
always
the
possible in the
doorkeeper,
future moment to go try to walk through. Right? I mean, yeah,
yeah. Well, that helps me understand why the doorkeeper would want the man to think he's not omitting anything. Because as long as he's still sitting outside the door, he's omitting trying to go through it. Um, and since we don't have any confirmation of the doorkeeper's actual power beyond its appearance, um, maybe the doorkeeper actually doesn't think that he would be able to do anything to stop the man from going through the door.
Yeah.
although there is this sentence that he makes many attempts to be admitted and wearies the doorkeeper by his importunity.
Yeah, but
It's a little
importunity
vague.
doesn't suggest that he is physically attempting to walk through the door. It seems like he's begging the doorkeeper
Yeah.
to give him permission to walk through the door.
Yeah, and everything we know about the doorkeeper is that he has a beard and a nose. Maybe there's nothing
And he
but
looks
that.
like a
It's
king.
just beard and a nose floating in space, with
Yeah.
no body attached. Hmm. But just to say that, there's something radically unfrightening about the doorkeeper. And all the fright comes from the fact that the guy just really wants a permission.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, well, well. Not that I cannot relate to him. Okay. Well, why don't we achieve something by finishing this conversation? That would be an achievement.
Wow.
If
I gained admittance to the end.
you give me permission,
Yeah.
can I have your
How
permission?
about this? If you want if you want to be admitted to the law, you have to make your own way. Disdain permission.
Yeah, what do
That's my
Americans
advice.
say? What do Americans say? Don't something.
Better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission.
That's right. American wisdom.
That's what Americans say.
It's wisdom.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Can everyone nod in permission to end this? Jack.
He disdains permission.
You
Alright.
don't need my permission.
Okay, thank you all.
Uh,
Thank you.
Thank you.